Yeah, hi. Mike Meddings, captain on First Air 860, going from Ottawa to Iqaluit. First officer Mark Davies. Mark Davies will be your pilot flying today up to Iqaluit, because I chickened out, even though the weather's good. We've got a 737-400 combi aircraft, relatively new aircraft to our fleet. Probably been in service for about a year, with the combis coming on last November. And we've got 50 odd passengers in the back, 37,000 pounds of payload, and that's about it. Now, okay. Ladies, if I can have your undivided attention. So we got flight time going up to Iqaluit of 2 hours and 50 minutes, pretty much, from wheels up to wheels down. So the first 40 minutes, good chance turbulence. We're going to try to find a smooth altitude. We're going to try it at 29 and eventually either go to 31 or 33, depending on where we can find smooth air. The alternate's Kuujjuaq. Weather-wise into Iqaluit, it's just minus 25, pretty much clear skies, a little bit ice crystals. Kuujjuaq is good as well. Yes, as it always is. Kuujjuaq is always beautiful. We also have DGs today, okay? They're up in the top side deck, so it doesn't really affect you guys. Emergency-wise, we've kind of talked a little bit about the LOSA thing. We touched on it anyways. But the other thing would be something simple, say rejected takeoff. You're going to get a remain seated, and purser contact flight deck.
We'll be looking outside. She'll be looking to see what she sees. If we need to upgrade, we'll be forebelling you.
Yeah, and if you upgrade, then we're going straight into an evacuation with no stairs, no deplane. We'll assess it as need be, and then figure out exactly where we're going to go from there. All right, so questions?
No questions.
Thank you.
Let's go and do this, okay?
Sure, crew oxygen valve or safety device. We check the 4D and bay. We check the conditions of the antennas, radar altimeters, VOR antennas. Here we're looking at the static ports. Try not to touch them, but we want to make sure that they're totally clean. Cargo guys are doing the forward cargo bay at this point. This aircraft has got a scratch and dent book that we use. Looking at the condition of the underbelly here. Inlet for the right-hand cooling pack, you can feel it's drawing in air. Cautionary signs, deflector door. Coming back into the right-hand main landing gear. We've got secondary brake indicators that we're looking at for rejected takeoff prevention. Looking at the conditions of both the hydraulic lines coming down to it. The fairing doors are secure. The main landing gear safety pin has been removed. Checking the condition of both the tires. We fly both the 200 and the 400. The 200, it's gravel, so we've got to really check to make sure that the conditions of the tires are suitable. In here we have the main brake accumulator. We're checking the pressure, pre-charge pressure, the APU, the two hydraulics reservoirs, the A and the B, making sure that they're above the level. Checking to see that there's no fluids that are left in the drainage cavities at all. Checking the A system and the B system reserve hydraulic quantity pressure. Coming back out. Over to the engines, the CFM engines. From the tailplane, we're looking to make sure that all the duct working is in place. Shroud doesn't have any hydraulics leaking from it. Checking the hot section for anything that is untoward. Here we're looking at the thrust reverser sleeves. It tells you the sleeves are actually stowed properly. And you're checking the bypass. In here, these are bumper bars for when the reverser sleeve translates. It's normal to see a bit of wear on it. And then on the number 2 engine we check, you're checking to make sure that the engine is actually cowled. So, there's 4 latches on the bottom of it. And we check those latches. We check that the oil servicing panel is secure. Mass vortex dissipator for the engine. Then we come across the front section, the C1. We rotate the C1 to make sure that there's free and easy travel. And you're checking to make sure that there's no accumulation of ice behind the C1 fan, okay? Other side of it, you're just looking to make sure that all the cowling is latched, access doors are secure. Come to the back, doing the same thing here. We're checking that the bypass and that the hot section is rotating and that there's no blade failures. Access panels, defueling station, master fueling station, checking the condition of the wing itself. Obviously, we work a lot in the high Arctic where there's a lot of icing, so it's critical that we watch for icing. The nav lights, strobe lights, the logo lights, and the static dissipators. We want to ensure that static dissipators are in place. Ailerons, fuel vent. We call this the canoes. You're checking the canoes for general condition and wear. Same as here. Checking the flaps. We'll often run a hand on the back end of the flap because it's free and clear of any fuel influence, so that if you do have icing, quite often you'll find it here. Back of the gear, we're looking at main brake indications as well. Looking to see that the oleo itself is inflated and it's not leaking any oil. Coming back off the trailing edge, rear antennas, checking the condition and security. Checking the rear cargo kit. Static port, main outflow valve, and the negative pressure relief valve. Just want to make sure that it actually goes in and out. APU inlet, toilet servicing, and bar none, tail skid. The 737-400, critical that you check it. Okay? Looking at the stabilizer and the elevator condition. Conditions of the, up on the vertical stabilizer, you can see the pitot inlet for the hydraulic system for the flight controls. Rudder and the APU. General service, discharge relief, and you want to check the general condition of the belly, of course. It's a fairly long airplane. That's why we have the tail skid. The airplane's pitch critical like a 737-800. Looking at the APU drain shroud, looking at conditions of the tires, we're looking at the main gear brakes, the strut. The safety pin has been removed. In here, we're looking at the APU pickup, the autopilot pickup, and the fire extinguisher discharge, and our main cargo door modification. All right. Once again, we check the trailing edge of the wing, looking for wears. We're looking at the trailing edge, the wing, nav lights, vents, and the condition of the leading edge, of course. The vents that you see are for the wing anti-ice. Coming back to the hot section of the engine, thrust reversers, bypass, and on this side, the engine cowl is quite easily checked because the engine's rotated slightly.
Access doors, make sure that they're secure. The C1, and we're looking at the N1 probes for pressure and temperature, and the bottom of the engine. Mass vortex dissipator, engine oil access, bumper bars, this side, and that the N1 section is clear and free. Number 1 pack, or the left-hand pack, it's inlet. Make sure there's nothing in there. And once again, straight down the fuselage, looking at the general condition of both the antennas, and also you're looking at the nose gear from a distance so you can get an idea of the geometry of it. It's the forward outflow valve, the ingestion lines. The CFMs pull in a fair bit of air, so the ingestion line is all the way up to the front. On the actual nose wheel, we're looking at both the conditions of the oleo strut, because we've got IRS units. You want to make sure that it's tight. Otherwise, the airplane, if it starts to wobble, you can start to get some IRS damage. Check the conditions of the cotter pins, safety wired and secured, and look for hydraulic leaks. The probes themselves, they have an aspirated tack gauge, which is this, which means that you can hear it, there's bleed air going to it, which means that the FMS is actually getting proper information right now. Into the nose gear area, we're looking for the conditions of the steering struts, that the bypass pin is installed, and that there's no main landing gear, nose gear retraction safety pin. And as we come up, forward E&E bay is secure. The nose cone itself, you're looking for cracks, dents, bird strikes, anything like that. On this airplane, because we're in combi, we have to check and make sure that on the outside, and I'm not too sure whether or not you got this, but the main cargo door itself, it's a modification that's been done to the aircraft. You'll see there's 2 green indicators telling us that the door is actually physically locked. There's a vent safety mechanism here, which has to be opened prior to opening the door. The door itself uses the hydraulic B system, and you're looking for the general condition of it. When they're loading freight, you want to ensure that the protection plates are in place and it's all secure. Okay? Then we go to the other side. So on this side, again, we're just checking out the nose cone itself, the radar. This is the headset usage, our static and our pitot probes. And we just check up on this side to make sure that the wheel rims have no damage to them. You're going to get cracking in a wheel. You get fatigue cracking along here. So it's fairly important to ensure that the wheel itself is safe. And that is basically it. When we go back up, we're going to check the top side of the wing just to make sure that it's clear and free. And we're going to check the cargo section. So the cargo section, today we're at our max takeoff weight coming out of here. And yet we don't have a position in here. Normally we have 4 positions. So what we can do is we can check this front position. What you're going to notice is that there's actually a skidoo that's underneath this, which is listed as dangerous goods cargo. So I've got the document releasing the aircraft that it's been pre-flight checked by our cargo supervisors and so on and so forth. And we get notified of that prior to the flight. You can see it's general cargo right now. There's probably perishable behind it. This entire section is a Class C section modified so that we have halon drop down. We have blowout panels in the case of depressurization over here. And this is the main cargo door that we're looking at from the outside. It's got a sill plate, roller floor, hydraulic system, the 2 latches that we checked, which were the green ones, and the vent panel. Okay? So, Start number 1.
31.
So the main things here, break a set. We ensure that number 2 is stable. We're looking at the N2, which is the hot section. The first officer is monitoring the oil pressure.
Oil pressure's rising.
So at 20-odd%, we're going to get oil pressure. We're making sure that we have an N1 rotation. 25%, we're going to put the fuel on. We're looking for 1,100 pounds to start, and a light off within 20 seconds. Watching on the side here, the engine vibration. We're watching for a max temperature for a start of 725. That both the N1 and the N2 section are accelerating normally. See the vibration meter got up to about half to 3/4. We don't release the start lever until we see the engine rolling back. Starter cutout is called by the first officer. Ground flight deck, we got 2 good starts. Clear to disconnect overhand signals. So that we see that both engines are stable. Ground crews told us the bypass pin is out, the tug and tow bar disconnected, and off they go off to release the hand signals. Make sure that both start levers are in. We're going to go with the generators on and call for the after start and flap 5. For the captain, it's a flow, boost pumps up and across, veto heat goes on, A system gets pressurized. We're looking to see that the cabin is starting to pressurize slightly to 1.125 prior to departure. First officer does his flow, which is the packs and the air ground switch into the flight mode, and then he starts reading the checklist.
Generators.
They are on.
Hydrostatic heat.
It is on.
Anti-ice.
Anti-ice is off.
Air conditioning, pressurization.
Auto and flight.
Hydraulics.
Pressures, the quantities checked.
Start levers.
Right, leads.
Ground equipment.
It is clear.
Ground hello, Empress 436, gate 9, push start please. Empress 436, Ottawa ground, 1 per second, start pressure. Start up, ground 436.
Ground is first stairs 860, negative max 025.
First stairs 60, ground runway 25, altimeter 2 repeat 1, taxi the apron, please, expression and run.
91, infer discretion, and call first stairs
2981.
4247, Ottawa ground, good morning, taxi the apron, and give expression 2 feet. Hey, Paris, okay,
Alright, we're about to do the before takeoff checklist. You may have not seen this before. The 727 had this. KLM put this in, and it's a flight control monitoring system, which is a great idea. So I'm going to say flight controls. We're going to go rudder left, right,
Ailerons left. Ailerons right. Elevator up. Elevator down. Flight controls check.
right, and then before takeoff checklist.
Recall.
And recall's been checked.
Checked. Flight controls.
We have been checked.
Checked. Flaps.
5 required and 5 green light.
Stabilizer trim.
4.5. This is set.
Flight instruments and radios.
They are set for departures.
Departure. Take-off data briefing.
Viewed by set.
View back set. Counter throttle.
Disarm.
View.
Ottawa clearance, 772.
Cabin.
We have identifier
Hello.
625 Yankee to Montreal.
Cabin secure.
726 Ottawa
Cabin
ground,
is
good morning,
secure.
request
You're down
direct
line.
contact run 1219 for taxi. Thank you.
Let's go blue line, please.
Engine start switches.
Continuous.
Transponder.
It is TARA.
Got the setting.
Cross check.
Cross check. Takeoff checks to go. Clearance to go. And lights. One to clear.
First air, 860 tower, contact departure 12817 airport, 1220 at 10 knots, clear takeoff runway 25, there is an RJ 2.5 miles.
Takeoff 24 first stairs. 866.
thrust set and once check. 80. Check.
CAD 7731, wind 220 and 10 knots, circle land, runway 25. Clear land 5, CAD 773.
E1. Rotate. Pause, right? Clear it up.
Just speed 220.
Adjust speed 220. Flap 1.
CAD 7731, exit right on 32, contact ground there, 121 decimal 9, good day. CAD 773.
What's up?
Tower Golf, Lima Kilo November, folding short of 22, ready to take off. Lima Kilo November, Ottawa Tower, turn to right during Stones Corners, not above 1,500 feet, wind 210 to 10, clear takeoff runway at 22. Stay north, runway 25 at all 15. Lima Kilo November.
So this morning we are parked at gate 23. I think you saw the push back and the engine start up, and then as we exited, we come out of the exit point of the ramp, which is an uncontrolled ramp, and we picked up the Bravo taxiway and we taxied down for departure off of runway 25. So coming out of runway 25 today, the airplane was weighing in at 137,000 pounds. With regards to that takeoff weight, we were within 1,000 pounds of the max takeoff weight of the aircraft. So today the max weight was 137.8, and our final numbers had us coming in at 137,000 pounds. So we came down to the threshold of runway 25, and then we flew the Ottawa 3 departure out of there. So the Ottawa 3 departure, we set up on the, once we get our clearance, we set it up on the mode control panel, which had a maximum altitude of 5,000 feet. And we also always have on a takeoff data card, we have our engine out procedure in the event that we were to lose an engine. In this particular case today, the engine out procedure was basically fly runway heading 251. The commonality that we need with the 200 and the 400 means that we have a paper takeoff data card, even though in a 400 technically we don't need it. But for example, coming out of Iqaluit today, southbound, we'll be taking off to the north, and if we lose an engine in Iqaluit today, we'll make a left-hand turn and head south over the water for terrain separation. Today, however, it's just the Ottawa 3, marked at the takeoff, the aircraft rotates. We have a maximum pitch on the takeoff of 10 degrees. Because of the length of the fuselage, the main thing that we're afraid of in this aircraft is a tail strike. So he doesn't go above 10 degrees. If he does, then I make a call and he reacts to it. Flew up, we get to what we call TOCA, which is takeoff clearance altitude. We use 1,000 feet above the ground. He then called for climb thrust speed of 220 knots. So me, because I'm the pilot monitoring, I set climb thrust using the N1 switch, and the speed switch goes up to 220 knots. You then retracted the flaps. Once we get the flaps up and the lights are out, you engage the autopilot into command B, which is driving the B flight control computer. So then we got a clearance, I believe, to 13,000 feet. They asked for a max forward speed, which for us, we're in Canada, we're speed limited to 250 below 10 still. It's not like in Europe where they give you free speed. Leaving 10,000 feet, we accelerate up to a climb speed of about 290 knots. We got clearance direct to a place called Radon, which is just a waypoint north of Ottawa. And but even before we got to Radon, ATC cleared us directly to Yankee Fox Yankee. So, on the map, the distance between Ottawa and Iqaluit is 1,200 nautical miles. So within the first 30 miles of leaving Ottawa, we are cleared from Ottawa directly to YFY, which is right here. NDB, within 5 miles of the actual airport. As we come northbound here, we're transiting through an area where we have some alternate en route airports in case we have a fire or an emergency in the back, such as Legrand. We have Kuujjuaq that's coming up on the right-hand side of the aircraft. I don't know if you'll be able to see, this is the vague outline of Quebec. And this is Baffin Island. Our destination obviously is Iqaluit. It used to be called Frobisher Bay. It's now called Iqaluit. And we briefly talked about the sister airline of First Air is running around northern Quebec. First Air itself, 69-year-old airline that's been around since 46, predominantly into the Arctic, but 30 to 33 destinations throughout the Arctic. Baffin Island is a big destination for us, obviously. Places such as Penguin and all of these settlements up to Resolute and all the way west out to Yellowknife and all the way back through the what's called the Cavalic, south to Edmonton and to Winnipeg. Main bases out of southern Montreal, Ottawa, Winnipeg, and Edmonton, and Yellowknife as well. So yeah, First Air, while it's been around and surviving for the 69 years, we've also acquired over the years a number of other airlines. Air Canada had a northern division called Northwest Territorial that we purchased probably in the late 80s, early 90s. And so we have, I've been here 30 years. I am a junior captain. Something that disgusts me every day. That being said, I am lucky enough that I've been able to see the North, and it does captivate and capture you. And at the end of the day, while I compete with guys that have been flying up here for 40 years, I know that they're all doing it because they have one intrinsic principle. They love the northern people. They love flying up here. And it isn't your run-of-the-mill flying. This is, you go out and you earn your living every other day. Last week, Rankin Inlet, with the 737, we had 3 days that we couldn't move because of a blizzard. When we eventually did go in there, of the 2 windsocks, there was only one of them remaining. And as we came through about 200 feet, I realized that that windsock had been shredded so that there was just one 5-knot ring on it. The wind speed that they topped out at was 75 knots. Building lost its roof. The skating rink collapsed. And the snow was probably about 8 feet high in the roads. And the northern people just take it all in stride. They don't have any issue with it. Try doing that in Toronto or New York. It's not going to happen. When you cancel for 3 days, it's not going to happen. But interestingly enough, the Northwest Territorial captain, he's probably got 40 years of doing it. He was leaving Rankin and he called me up. He said, "Mike, it's quite slippery down there." They had freezing rain for about 5 hours. Then it went to minus 29 and 75 knot winds. When I went in there, that ramp had probably 5 inches of ice on it. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen it that slippery. And I was in a 400, which is not the nicest airplane to be on a slippery ramp with. At least in a 200, you have thrust reversers, but with the high bypass engines, the airplane's always wanting to move. So it's a little bit of what we do. That was 8-9 days ago. And now I'm doing this run up to Iqaluit and back. We go up there, it's minus 25, rain showers when we get home. Because our crews are flying between the 200 and the 400, there are some subtle differences that they have to be aware of. For example, if you were in a 200, effectively this is what you're looking at in front of you is in terms of an ADI. Obviously in the 400, all of that automation and information has been replicated here. So we've gotten rid of the airspeed indicator, although this is a standby airspeed indicator. So the airspeed indicator is a tape here. It's running, so right now it's indicated airspeed is 274 knots or Mach 7.4. The hollow bar here is showing us our split between where we are at a neutral G and a 1.3 G. So if we took the airplane right now into a 45-degree turn, what you would see is you would see the yellow hollow bar coming down from above and a hollow bar coming up from below. This red and black line is showing you the barber pole, so it's a max forward speed of the aircraft. From left to right we have FMC speed is displayed, which is driving off the flight management computer, is what is driving the auto throttle to its assigned speed of Mach 7.4. In this column, you've got effectively a pitch, so the airplane is saying that I'm going to be flying in what's called vertical nav path. You'll see that switch around between path and vertical speed, or it could also show you a vertical speed mode or another vertical mode. The third column is showing you how you're tracking laterally. So in this particular case, it's using lateral navigation, which is derived from the GPS. And this is showing you that the flight director itself, which is the magenta bar, is in command. So the primary difference is obviously is you have an ADI with the airspeed and with your command modes at the top of it. The HSI is effectively non-existent in the 200. All you would have would be a round dial representation basically. In this you have effectively a moving map display, and within the moving map display it's giving you the wind direction, so it's 270 knots at 29. In here we're showing the where the IRSs believe they are relative to the aircraft. The aircraft has GPS and it's automatically updating, and it's basically flying off of GPS, so it's not doing anything like DME updating. QJWAC is shown in green because it is what's tuned and identified on our VHF nav receivers. This is the actual track line that we're going to fly up to Iqaluit. And this is the heading bug, which is driven off the mode control panel. So it can be moved left or right. And what it is showing is that we've got a heading selected of 028. And the diamond here is telling us that that is the track made good for wind drift. Time, terrain here shows us that we have enhanced GPWS, and so once the airplane descends through or gets close to the ground, it'll start contouring the map for us. This little indicator is showing us where the ADFs are pointing. The TFC is showing us that we've got traffic off the TCAS, so if there were aircraft out, we'd be able to see them on the HSI. Ground speed is 441, the true airspeed is 428, and we have 370 nautical miles to go to destination. So through the mode selection down here, we can make it look similar to what a 200 would have by selecting various modes. And they all basically represent the same thing, other than there are some subtle differences. This saying we're navigating to a waypoint 61 degrees north. The old style rose compass, if you will, and a plan mode. The center mode, normally we run in map. Quite often, you may have seen as well coming out of Ottawa, I'll run in center map because it gives you a bit of a looking back distance in case you ever have a problem with the aircraft and you need to get back to an airport immediately. I think it's fairly prudent that you should have the return nav aids set up for whatever the approach use is for the departing runway. And if you have a map mode that's kind of backwards looking, you can very quickly get back to the airport. I unfortunately had a 727 one day where we had an onboard fire and had to do a quick return. And it's nice to have the situational awareness of where you just left and how to get back there as quickly as you can. That being said, on the HSI, we can also pull up the weather on it, which isn't going to show us anything here today, but just using the tilt, so it's -1 degree of tilt. It's now painting the ground, and then back up to get rid of it. Obviously in the summertime, we're using the weather radar fairly extensively. Ottawa, Montreal are fairly bad for thunderstorms, but normally we're running in terrain mode. So that is the big differences between the 200 and the 400. The altimetry is pretty much the same. We have vertical speed indicators, we have an altimeter. On this side we have a clock and we have a RMI. This airplane is slightly different in this setup in that you have a standby altimeter, standby airspeed, and a ADI. Some of the 200s will have that setup, but by and large, they split off with the airspeed into a different setup. The engine instruments, yeah, they're sort of digital, but they're not really that digitized. But they are basically the same as the 200, with one exception. In a 400, you set thrust by using N1. In a 200, with Pratt Whitney engines, you set it using EPR. And the 200 doesn't have the engine vibration monitors, 400 does. Obviously, vibration monitors a far more important thing in a 400 than it is in a 200. You look back at Kegworth in the UK and shutting down the wrong engine. That's where you would go. And most 727 guys and 737-200 guys, we lived and were raised in an age where the vibration monitors were terrible to begin with. And airlines just took them out because they were erroneous. Suddenly you get the CFM engine and they actually mean something. And unfortunately for Kegworth, there was, and there always will be this, you got to remember if you're in a 200 or 400, but that would have helped the boys in Kegworth because their vibration monitor was showing a high vibration, and yet they shut down the wrong engine, which is unfortunate. We were just being asked what our Mach number was because we have another aircraft, a 737-200 behind us that is always encroaching on us. This airplane is flying what's called an econ cruise, so it's flying its best speed for fuel efficiency. Some operators, like the one behind us, will fly as fast as they can and burn a lot of fuel. We let the airplane decide based on a number of parameters what our best econ speed is, which is what you're seeing here. So it's 7.4. The 37-200 behind us is probably doing 7.6. And so as we get closer and closer to the Iqaluit, the separation becomes smaller and smaller. Up here we're transiting between radar and non-radar for ATC, so they need our Mach speed because they'll apply either a speed restriction to us or it could even be a time restriction. So Udo, I'd really like to finish my cookie.
Okay, Mike, you ready for the briefing for the RNAV GNSS runway 34? Its effective date is the 18th September 2014. Page number is India Alpha Papa 3 Bravo. Inbound course selectors we've got set up to 345. We've made the temperature corrections for the crossing altitude at Eproc for the final approach fix. And the missed approach is climbed to 3,600 feet, which is corrected to 42 for temperature. On a track of 345, back to Umani as required for the shuttle climb. As we discussed, we have a couple of route mods in there. Top of descent route mod is in at 140 nautical miles back. Send to 249,000, 30 miles back of the airport, actually, sorry. And that's Yankee Fox Yankee 01, followed by our temperature corrected altitude for crossing the final approach fix, and the Umani correction at 4,200 feet for the temperature correction in Iqaluit. And when you're ready, I'll give you the card.
Go ahead, card.
And 119.5's gross landing weight. Engine bleeds are going to be on. 82.8 is the go around deeper. 1,400 feet set on Toka. Runway 34. Flaps 40. VREFs 139.
39.
Flex 144.
44.
Refin 20 is 159. Last clean out is 220. As published, minimums, as we said, are 820 temperature corrected. You've got auto brake 3 selected. And I did put 109.9s up for DME. We'll may want to turn them up. 4 and 204s are upset 1 and 2.
Yes, so
The backup.
17.4.
Okay, that's fine, sure.
Alright, 17.4 is in the backup.
Any questions?
No question.
And we will plan
I think we'll have to exit the Alpha.
exit on the Alpha.
I think so,
Okay.
because Canadian, or the other guys right behind us,
Yeah, understood.
are they,
I don't know.
yeah.
They're about the same.
they're holding.
Okay, so we'll exit Alpha. And as far as the automation, we'll let the FMC fly the approach. Once we're inside the initial fix, we can set minimums down to 800 feet. And 300 feet above minimums, I'll get you to set the missed approach. We will disconnect the autopilot at minimums and fly to the landing. Any questions?
Okay, so you're going to disconnect at minimums, and, alright. Okay.
Okay.
No questions on the briefing.
Okay, approach briefing's complete. I've been with First Air almost as long as Mike, 29 years. I flew the turboprops primarily up into the last 5 years. I've been on the jet, and I worked out of Iqaluit primarily for 23 years, 24 years, I guess, flying the heavy turboprops. As Mike said earlier, the 748, and then I flew the ATR 42 up and down in all the settlements. Iqaluit's got about used to be about 55, 6, but I think there's about 8,000 people living there now. Might even be more. It's the capital of Nunavut now. The runway we're landing on is nice long runway. It's kept in real good condition, and you have an ILS and RNAV approaches for both the ILS runway 34 approach, and you have an RNAV approach coming in onto runway 16 now, and they still have an NDB approach onto runway 34 and or circling, although we don't do any circling in the Boeing 737s. The other turboprops still do. But yeah, I spent many years up in Iqaluit and have enjoyed most of my time flying in the Arctic.
So just to explain a little bit as to what is going on with the EFIS here, this indication right here is showing us the vertical deviation path. This is our inbound track into Iqaluit. We've got two rings that are set up around the Iqaluit airport itself, one at 25 and one at 15 nautical miles. 25 allows us, when you look at an approach plate, if you were to look at an approach plate, it's going to give you minimum safe sector altitudes within 25 of a fix. Going into the high Arctic, the most important thing that we're concerned about is our separation from terrain for temperature especially. So this 3,600 feet here, you got temperature corrected up to 4,200. So once we're inside of 25 nautical miles, we know that we're going to descend down to 4,200 feet because we're going into effectively a non-radar airport. The 15 nautical mile is giving us an indication as to when we should be starting to configure the airplane. And this band here is the projected descent time to get to 6,000 feet. So this FMC is telling us that at around 15 nautical miles from the airport, we're going to be at 6,000 feet if we're all on the path. When we look at the actual approach that we're flying, the airplane's coming inbound here. Here's the 15 DME arc, and then it'll come down to Eprock, which is the final approach fix. And I don't know if you can see this. Final approach fix altitude's normally 1650. It's minus 25 degrees today, so it's been temperature corrected up to 1900 feet. So we're going to cross Eprock. The final approach fix on the altimeter is 1900 feet. And then we descend down to our minimum altitude because it's an RNAV approach, which is temperature corrected up to 820 feet. So on the FMC here, you can see the threshold has got a 3-degree glide path that the airplane is programmed to be coming in at 144 knots, which is what we have in here. And then if we miss, for some reason, the airplane is going to go to a place called Umani, which is right here, and it's going to enter a hold, right-hand turns, at 4,200 feet. The missed approach that's published is up to 36, but because of the temperature correction, we got to go up to 4,200. So that's what we've got set up for the FMS, or FMC rather, for the approach into Iqaluit.
Drag required and then cancel it.
2,500.
25 grand. Times 30. 30 grand.
$1,000.
Table, set to Mr. Birch. WS Birch is set. Commander Minerals. Check. Minerals.
500. One hundred, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Four three six, approximate final 380. 436, wind 3007, landing Boeing sitting at
Hey, Mike Jones.
Anybody behind us? Negative. We're going to backtrack for Charlie. Spinning on Mr. 860, ready? Four three six in the backtrack, 3-4. 436, Roger.
That was our little trip to Iqaluit today, I suppose. But it's been a pleasure having you on board, all of you, including the guy behind the camera, even though he's a strong German man. Anyways, yeah, that's it. That's the 400 northbound.
Green light.
40 green light, landing checklist is complete. My first year 8 tasks, so just going to bedrock final line down. Minimums, by the way. And let's just get landing, check landing.
30, 20, 10.
And 60 microvolts.
Clear, right?